The Paul Leslie Interviews.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hugh Prestwood is a songwriter. Many of his songs have been recorded by the likes of Crystal Gayle, Randy Travis, Trisha Yearwood, Michael Johnson, Don Williams, James Taylor. I could go on and on. Hugh Prestwood has also recorded his own albums. He's an inductee of the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. It's a great pleasure to welcome him here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
It's an honor. Has the reason that you write songs changed through the years?
No, really it hasn't. I just when I began writing songs, which was really in around the age of 26 or so. I'd been a musician since I was about 10, but I didn't start writing songs until I was about 26 or 7, and I thought, I got a great, being creative, I really got off on it. I felt like I got a response from people on my songs, and something about it to me was very gratifying, and that's the same reason I write songs today.
Is this something you do every day?
One way or another, I do something every day. I may be working on a song, or I may be working, I do my own demos on my songs. So I may be working on a demo, or I may be working on a song, but when I have what I call a normal day, meaning I don't have to go to the doctor or be somewhere, I usually like to get up and, work on my music sound. I really enjoy it.
What does it feel like to write a song?
Just feels, well, my wife always says I'm happiest when I'm writing a song I'm excited about, and I just get into it. Something about, ever since, I guess I was little, something about the right music really got me excited, really turned me on, and so, when I sit down to write a song, my idea is instead of waiting for someone else to write some song that really gets me excited, I want to do that myself, so I won't have to wait. It's just something I like to do. I think, I always often think of myself like a painter. I think painters just like to paint, and they don't think about retiring, and they don't really think necessarily about how much they're going to sell their paintings for. They just really enjoy the creative process. I've always advised aspiring songwriters that, if you're not really getting off on the process of writing a song, you're not going to be able to keep going. If your objective is just to have a hit or to make money, you're not going to keep going.
You're saying it's an art that needs tenacity.
Well, just I don't know if tenacity is the word, but you just gotta. To me, it's just something. It's a labor of love. I just love to do it. I love expressing myself, musically and lyrically. I really get off on it. Like, I always say I have this honeymoon period when I write a song that I really think, this is the greatest thing I've ever written. I feel great. It may last only a week or so, but sometimes longer. As opposed to live performing, when I occasionally play out, live as an artist, even on the best of nights where I feel like I played really as good as I could play, that feeling lasts about, it's gone the next day.
Was there an artist growing up that you loved the most?
It's hard to say. I very early in my career, I heard a lot of, growing up, I heard classical music a lot around the house. I heard a lot of just typical American pop music of the 50s and into the 60s, and I really got into Harry Belafonte, and just early folk music. I used to get records from the Library of Congress that were these, Alan Lomax recordings, I guess, that he did out in the field. And I don't know, just a lot. I always think that people who really love music, they like a lot of different kinds. And I listened to a lot of country when I was growing up in El Paso. And I listened to a lot of Mexican music, that was on the radio. And just, a lot of things.
What songwriters do you admire the most?
I was thinking the other day that, in a funny way, I think the golden age, how they talk about the golden age of Hollywood, I think the golden age of songwriting was into the late 60s and early 70s when you had Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and, the Eagles and Jackson Browne. That whole period to me was, that was to me the peak of the singer-songwriter thing. That I have this theory that people of that generation, which is my generation, we were coming off a period of, in other words, we were programmed by music that was very, I think, structured and well written. And I think as time went by and the singer-songwriter thing came on, and then as subsequent generations began to sort of play off that, I feel like the really basic, good, solid structure of songs began to dissipate with some of the more modern writers. I hear a lot of songs today that, I think, well, I can see why that's a hit, but I just don't think that the structure of the real skeleton of the song is that strong.
We're talking with songwriter Hugh Prestwood. I've seen it written in many places, the word discovered. When Judy Collins discovered your work, were you looking to be discovered, or was it an accident?
No, I grew up in El Paso. I started writing songs. I got enough response sort of locally that I began to think, well, maybe I had some talent. And I had a friend who was a close friend of mine in El Paso who ended up moving to New York City. I went up there and visited her and just kind of sense of the city, and I liked it up there. And as I was, I was teaching school. I got out of college. I was teaching grade school. And as my 30th birthday was approaching, something in me just decided, look, I got to give this a try. I can live with it if I don't get anywhere, but I'm not going to live with, when I'm old, I'm not going to be happy with myself if I didn't try to see if my songwriting could amount to something. So I literally just, moved to New York, and really with nothing going on except the intention of, getting discovered. So I began playing showcases anywhere I could. I knocked around the village for 2 or 3 years. I had my little tape recorder, and I was recording my own little demos. And I was a huge fan of Judy Collins. One day, Tom Paxton, I did a showcase at the Bottom Line, and Tom Paxton came up to me afterwards and was complimentary, and I asked him if he would send a tape to Judy Collins, and he did. Lo and behold, and one day, she called me up. And so that was my big break, you might say.
What do you think about Judy Collins, not only as an artist, but as a person?
Oh, I think she's great. We've been connected for a really long time. It's funny, there's certain artists that I have had hits with and everything that I feel like we become more chummy. Judy is a little more, I don't know how to explain it. She's just, I guess I have her on a higher pedestal or something. So we've certainly been together many times, but we have never really hung out very much. But she's, to me, is just this remarkable artist who also has a remarkable track record of singing great songs. So I was extremely, and I still am extremely honored that she likes my songs.
It's very cool, the company that you're in terms of Judy Collins. She was on this program, and she said, I was the first person to record a Leonard Cohen song. And then, gosh, I'm forgetting now, but she mentioned another person. It's good company.
Mm-hmm. Really is. The first record I was on, where she recorded a couple of my songs, the album was called Hard Times for Lovers, and that was one of my songs. But, Randy Newman was on there, Don Henley was on there, Alan Marilyn Bergman were on there, and it was like, oh my God, Stephen Sondheim was on, I was like, whoa, I'm in some company here.
The first time that you were in New York, what was going through your head? A guy from El Paso, Texas.
Well, I think I had I don't know, I can't explain. I sort of burned my bridges, you might say, in El Paso, kind of messed up my marriage, was really sort of dove into this pond, not really knowing what I was going to do, and feeling extremely motivated, though. I think because I had because I was so alone up there, and I had no good reason to have left all my whole life in El Paso unless I really accomplish something. I feel like I was very motivated, and I just, I worked every day. I felt like, what can I do to get something to happen? And when I first went up there, you always think you're going to get discovered very quickly, and you also think at least I thought I was ready too, and it turned out I was not ready. I had a bit of growth in my songwriting. When I moved to New York, I had written about 100 songs. When I look back now, there's only about 2 songs in there that I would dare play anybody. Most of the others I think pretty lousy. But I just, I was up there and I just felt like I went up there really not thinking to myself, if I could just stay up there a couple of months, and then I could go back to El Paso and not feel like a complete idiot. But just somehow I just kind of hung on. I got a little affirmation here and a little affirmation there once in a while, and I often felt like I was ready to give it up, and I just kind of kept hanging in there.
You just said about your work, there's only a couple from that era that you would dare play in public. So should an artist be hard on his or her work, in your opinion?
Yes, absolutely. It's funny though. And I often say that the best way to be is to have, you might say, mood swings. Because if you're too hard on yourself, I've known a couple of people over the years who I think were quite talented, but they were so hard on themselves that they pretty much, just stopped themselves from writing. They were too critical. Then I've met other people who were just not critical at all, and their songwriting never improved when it might have. So my feeling is, I kind of go back and forth, and this is really true on every song I write. I start thinking, oh my God, this is the greatest song ever written. Then the next day I think, what was I thinking? This thing's horrible. And then I kind of get back into it, and I say, oh, this is something here. And then the next day I think, well, I don't know. And I often say that I finish my songs about 20 times. I keep thinking, well, okay, that's it. And then the next day I get up and think, well, maybe it isn't that good. I think, when you get into the major leagues in particular, you start realizing that, you've got to try to get it. Every song I write, I try to get it as perfect as I can. A lot of writers, like in Nashville, they just kind of crank out a lot of songs. I know guys that write, several hundred songs in 1 year. My total output for my whole career is around 450 songs. I'm a very slow writer. I don't co-write, and I just, I always think if I was a painter, I'd be like Vermeer. I just kind of go over and over the songs, trying to, make them perfect. Some people can't work. It's not like everybody should work that way. I think, little by little you start realizing, it's like you're in the major leagues here, and I always compare it sometimes to a golfer. You got a golfer who's shooting, the difference between the top pro golfers and some of the really great local golfers at your local club are just a few strokes, and it's that last, 5% or whatever it is that really makes you, a pro.
We're talking with singer-songwriter Hugh Prestwood. You just mentioned that you don't co-write. Why?
Mm-hmm. I often compare I sometimes think of myself as a painter, and I just don't want to hand the brush to anyone else. I just want to do it myself. I've tried co-writing quite a few times over the years, with some really good people and with some people that I'm really good friends with. So it's not a matter of, relaxing, you might say, but I just don't enjoy it. I don't know how to explain it. I often, I'll get together with someone once in a while. I used to, and really in about 45 minutes, I just want it out of there. I don't know how to explain it. I just want to do it myself, and that's how I get off on it. I found as soon as I start co-writing, some of the, I could see the potential in an idea that was subtle, and that my co-writer, was not recognizing. So I'd be pulled back toward doing something more obvious. That happened to me a lot. Is that my co-writer would typically try to pull me back into some more formula kind of hit kind of place, and that's great for them, but I just did not enjoy doing it. And then I think the last thing about my personality is that I don't really like to be watched when I'm doing anything. Even mowing the lawn, I don't like to be scrutinized. So I just, having another person in the room, to me, it's not something I really like.
Given that so many of your songs have been recorded by country singers, is it hard to be a writer of country songs and not live in Nashville?
Well, it is in a way. There are a lot of advantages to living in Nashville. There really are. A lot of what happens in the music industry, and probably in any, whether in acting or whatever, a lot of it has to do with being in the right place at the right time. I've heard many stories about, some actor walking down Sunset Boulevard and he bumps into a friend, and the next thing you know, that he's in a movie that the friend was casting. So I think I miss that. But on the other hand, because I'm such a slow writer, I tend to write about 10 or 12 songs a year. What happens with me that usually works pretty good is that I can go down to Nashville and see a producer, and he knows that I'm not going to be back next week with another couple of songs. He knows I'll probably be in, 6 months from now or even a year from now with playing a few things. So I feel like that works to my benefit to get in to see people. Another thing that I found about Nashville, which I love Nashville, and the songwriting community down there is just filled with these amazing, delightful, funny, creative people. But when I'm down there more than a few days, a couple of times in my career I've been down there for a couple of weeks, and I start to feel this pressure to write a hit. It's hard to explain, except that you're constantly hearing about, so-and-so just got a cut on so-and-so, and he's had his second number one this year, and I begin to feel like I need to hurry up. And I don't like writing with that sort of pressure, so I like to go down to Nashville, get a big fix on, get some affirmation, maybe play at the Bluebird or something, come back and get away from the music business and sit down to write a song and with the attitude that I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm not going to feel, and that's a disadvantage. My songs have never been easy pitches, you might say. My songs are really down the middle kind of country hits. But that's just what I do.
Is it possible that because of that, the fact that they're not, I guess you said easy down the middle, that's why they're so good?
Well, I think that's true. I think that's certainly why they're different and why they're fresh. I always say the hardest, if I can get a song cut and onto an album, of course, now the albums are sort of getting passé, but I used to say that my songs really stand out because they are different. And these producers will sit around and play, listen to dozens of songs, and they're all kind of well done, and they're all written by pro writers, but they all have a lot of sort of similar things to them. A lot of times, not anything real fresh. And so I think my songs do stand out that way. On the other hand, it's the artists and the producers, they're taking more of a chance when they record a song of mine. That the mentality, for better or worse, the mentality is that every song most artists record, they want to think it might be a hit. But they in my experience, they rarely think about, well, this is a great song, and I don't care if it's a hit or not. Most of them are thinking, I want to have hits. So, and then the other thing I noticed is that a lot of people in Nashville, particularly in the lower rungs of the music business, who are like A&R people, they don't want to get near anything that doesn't sound like a hit already. Because if they get behind some kind of unusual song and it flops, then they look bad. But if they get behind a song that really sounded like a hit but wasn't a hit, well, they can always say, well, it sounded like a hit to me.
I'm just thinking about how different their perspective is compared to how I consume music. When I'm trying to find songs, or when I open my mailbox and there's CDs from people who are wanting to be on their music on the air, I'm looking for which one of these songs is different. Who is the unique writer or the unique singer here? That's interesting.
I'll tell you a story. Before Judy Collins discovered me, I had one song recorded by Jackie DeShannon out in L.A., and Jim Ed Norman, who later became the president of Warner Brothers in Nashville, he was producing out in Los Angeles, and he did an album on Jackie DeShannon. And just through a strange kind of guy that I got connected with in New York City, he sent a copy of the song I wrote out to Jim Ed Norman. The song was called Dorothy. And the song is about a sort of what happened to Dorothy when she got back from Oz. You know, and my idea was that once she got back to Kansas, it seemed pretty boring. And she kind of wished she could get back to it. But anyway, long story short, when I talked to Jim Ed a few years later, he said that he was sitting around listening to a lot of the typical stuff, and all of a sudden this really unusual song came on, you know, about what happened to Dorothy, and it really struck him. And so that, in a funny way, besides Tom Paxton, Judy Collins had gotten wind of that Jackie DeShannon song and liked it. So when Tom Paxton, I'm not sure exactly, but I think when he approached her with my demo tape, she may have already been familiar with the Jackie DeShannon cut.
Interesting. We're talking with Hugh Prestwood, songwriter and singer and recording artist.
That's me.
One of your songs, which I definitely would say is a unique song, you sent it to me as a single CD. I still have it, and I still play it from time to time. Savannah, Fare You Well.
Right.
Very, very interesting. And I like the mystery, at least from the listener's perspective, from my perspective. I like a song that makes you wonder, what's this song about? I could interpret it this way. I could interpret it that way. The first thing I thought about was, is Savannah a woman, or is Savannah the place?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that song.
Well, you know, in a funny way, that sort of ambiguity is something I sometimes like to do. Like I have a song called April Fool that Colin Ray recorded, and it's sort of the same kind of thing. Is April a girl, or is it the month? With Savannah, Fare You Well, you know, a lot of my songs I'm not sure where they're going when they start. I just kind of get usually a musical idea, and I begin to just see where that music wants, you know, how does it speak to me? What does it say? A pretty common theme in my songs is leaving someplace. You know, for good or bad. I probably about every 8 or 9 songs I write a song about, let's get the hell out of here, you know? And I think in a funny way, Savannah taps into some of that. It taps into some of my, there's a darkness to that song. You know, I certainly have had periods in my life that like really prior to moving to New York, it was a pretty dark period where I was sort of jettisoning my prior life. So I don't know, that song just kind of went where it went. You know, these images in it are all like pretty dark. And when Jimmy Buffett recorded it, I couldn't believe it.
Why is that? Why couldn't you believe it?
Well, it just didn't, it didn't sound to me like a Jimmy Buffett song. It was just one of those things. You think of him doing a really much more party songs and fun songs, but he does some serious stuff. And I'm friends with Russ Titleman, who produced one of his records, and Russ played him the song, and they decided to cut it. And I initially thought, oh God, this is never going to work. I always say that songs are like when my wife is in a department store and she sees a dress that she thinks she likes, and then she won't really know whether that dress works until she goes in and tries it on. And to me, songs are like that. You have artists that like a song, but when they try it on, it doesn't suit them. And I thought I had a feeling that this Jimmy was going to feel like when they gave it a go that it wasn't his thing, it didn't suit him. But Russ Titleman cut a great cut on the thing. I love that cut he did on it.
Was Savannah the place or a woman?
It's funny. I think it's more the woman. And I had no idea that Jimmy's daughter was named Savannah at the time, but that probably worked in my favor too. I don't know.
Interesting. I can recall one time that I was down in Key West, Florida, and I was interviewing the great Jerry Jeff Walker.
Oh, yeah.
And a couple people told me, they said, oh, he's this cantankerous guy, you know. And I was a little nervous to meet him. And he was gruff, but in a warm way. I know that sounds that sounds like that doesn't make sense, but
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's a good description.
Yeah, he's gruff in a warm way. And after the interview, I thought he's going to want to skedaddle and get out of there, but he sat and talked for a while, and I still have a very, I can see this, like clearly. After the interview, we were talking about different songs, and he sang to me, a cappella. He was just fooling around, and he started to sing, "The Moon is Still Over Her Shoulder," which he recorded.
Right. Yeah. I love Jerry Jeff Walker, so I thought that was great. My son was just down in, my son lives in Fort Worth, and they were at Billy Bob's down there, and Jerry Jeff Walker was playing there. And this is I think within the last year, and my son said they were sitting there talking and, you know, kind of listening to Jerry Jeff, and all of a sudden he started singing "The Moon is Still Over Her Shoulder." And they were thrilled. So he's still doing it once in a while anyway.
Yeah, he told me he likes that song a lot. What inspired it?
You know, believe it or not, the opening lines say, you know, she's fixed in his mind like the picture he's kept in his wallet for years, and the image has never been tarnished by the blood, sweat, and tears. And to him it appears that the moon is still over his shoulder. Believe it or not, that came from an Ann Tyler book. The initial idea, there's a novel called Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant. There's a passage in that book where this person is remembering somebody that they went to high school with. And there's a line in there, or a paragraph that says something to the effect that, you know, that person is stuck in their memory, and that girl would always be that girl in high school. Something about that kind of struck me as like, yeah, having somebody sort of fixed in your mind permanently in a place, no matter how much time has gone by. And then the other element that came into it was I had a picture in my wallet, you know, of my first wife. Even though we'd been separated for a long time and she'd remarried, I didn't throw it out, not because of sentimental reasons. It just felt funny to me to throw it out. So anyway, that also came into, you know, had that picture in the wallet. And then I just, you know, kind of let the muse take me where it wants to go. I always tell songwriters, you know, that your only real compass is your gut feelings, you know, and I always say don't disagree with them.
This is probably a difficult question. Who has done the best job of interpreting a Hugh Prestwood song?
Well, overall, I'd say Michael Johnson.
He did a lot of them.
Yeah, he did a lot of them. He did them good, too. He, to me, was like Jimmy Webb had Glenn Campbell, and I had Michael Johnson. He just... And then the second after that was Colin Ray. Colin Ray recorded about 5 or 6 of my songs. And he also is a great interpreter of songs. You know, it's nothing more exciting than to hear your song recorded even better than you thought it could be. And that doesn't happen all the time, but that's certainly a thrill. And that's when, to me, the artist and the producer bring as much or more to the table as you did, you know, with your song. And then, of course, you know, I have individual little things like Trisha Yearwood's version of the song "Members Win" is just like, oh my God, you know. And same with Alison Krauss doing "Ghost in This House." Shenandoah did a fabulous version of it too. Most of the time, I find that the singers, if they really like the song, or if the producer really likes the song, they won't screw around with it too much. They'll try to do it like you did it, you know, more or less. Every now and then you get somebody who really screws it up, but not very often.
There's a lot of songwriters, when they're asked about their favorite song, inevitably they say, they're like my children, I couldn't decide. So I would ask you in this way, if you had to pick one of your songs to represent you, and you could only pick one, which one would it be?
It's a toss-up between three songs: "Ghost in This House," "Song Remembers When," and Michael Johnson's version of "That's That." I absolutely love Michael's version of "That's That." To me, I often think if I had to play one song for somebody to impress them the most, who not necessarily was in the country or any other thing, I would probably play him that great version of "That's That" that Brent Mayer cut on Michael.
When somebody listens to your music, whether it's you performing it at some place like the Bluebird, or somebody's listening to an album, either one of your albums or one that another artist that's covering you, what is it that you want the listener to get from the experience?
I want them to be moved, Very early when I started writing songs, every now and then I'd play something I could tell the listener, it could be just a friend over at their house or whatever, but I could tell they were moved by that song, what I had done. And that to me was like, wow, this is such an amazing thing that I can, not only does this move me, but it's moving other people. And so I just want them to take that journey with me, come along for this relatively short ride, and hopefully, really enjoy it. And to me, the best thing when I was growing up, and I still am this way, every now and then I hear a song and I play it several times or a lot of times in a row, And so that's what I'm hoping that they'll really get moved on and want to listen to it again.
What is the best thing about being Hugh Prestwood?
Well, that's I should get my wife to answer that question. I don't know. I think I was I was gifted with some real talent as a songwriter. I think that's who I am more than anything else. So that's probably what I would answer to that question. It's just me as a songwriter. I think I don't have many redeeming qualities other than that. My wife always says, when she gets down on me, she's unhappy with something I've done, and every now and then she'll hear some of my songs and she'll think I'm worth the trouble,
This is very open-ended. For anyone who's listening in, wherever they may be, what would you say to them?
Well, you mean songwriters or
just anybody? Yeah.
Just anybody? Well, I'm a great believer that relationships, having close friends and close family ties are more important than anything else, and whether you're going to be happy or not. So I'm a big believer in, and it shows up in a lot of my songs. I'm a big believer that you have to maintain relationships. In other words, they're like plants. You got to water them. You got to nurse them. You got to take care of them. I believe that whether it's friends or your wife or your whoever, another thing that crops up in my song a lot is forgiveness. You can't have good friends and good family relationships without having a certain amount of forgiveness. You got to forgive your friends and family for their mistakes now and then, or regularly. I have a song called "One More Chance," and the key line is, "Every day they give each other one more chance." And then getting as far as aspirations go artistically, as I said earlier, you got to follow where your muse wants to take you. And I've had my own experience, and I've seen many other examples of people on the highest level, like in the music business, misleading, not intentionally, but misleading, and steering people wrong. That was a very unusual song from the field point of view. And several producers said they liked the song, but they wanted me to change the feel. With "Song Remembers When," I got two big-time producers who asked me would I consider rewriting the song to make it more radio-friendly. And I thought, well, I don't know how to do that. So, my feeling is to anybody, particularly in the arts, you got to stick with what you're doing. That's the only way you're going to develop your own voice. The minute you start following what people tell you, not that you should ignore advice, but I think you listen to the advice. If it rings true, then listen and follow it. But if it doesn't ring true, don't follow it. I've seen some pretty talented people get messed up by following well-meaning criticism. Oh, another thing I tell aspiring people that really, this is to me something very important, is that you need to surround yourself, particularly, your close friends and your spouse or your significant other, they need to really affirm what you want to do. It's very critical that you have your closest people affirm your ambition, whether you want to be a songwriter or a professional bowler or whatever. If you don't have that, particularly if you have the negative thing of that, where you're with somebody and they don't really believe in what you're doing, to me, you're doomed. You're not going to get anywhere. You got to get rid of that person, or give up the pursuit of whatever it is you want to do. But being around people that affirm your, beliefs and ambitions is very important.
My last question.
Okay.
Who is Hugh Prestwood?
Oh dear. I'm a basket of neuroses of some kind. I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm a songwriter. I'm basically fairly insecure. I always think most great artists are somewhat insecure. They need to question what they're doing and keep thinking, is that good enough? And then I think, I love my family. I'm kind of a loner. My wife and I often think we're like hermits. We don't get out and about that much, although we love going on down to Nashville and things like that. But I'm kind of a solitary person.
I have to say, you've given me a lot to think about.
Well, good.
Anyone who wants to check out the website of Hugh Prestwood, just go to www.hughprestwood.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate you taking the time to, interview me, and I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you so much.
Okay, talk to you later.
All right, take it easy.